Okay, so we're going to see an example of using C-based sockets to communicate with each other. So what I'd like you to do is create a folder, call it their sockets example. You can put it on your desktop if you like. Open up Visual Studio Code, and what you're going to do is you're going to create two files. You're going to create client.c and then server.c. Now I've started the process here. What you're going to do is you're going to, okay, we're going to put some label on each one. So one is the client, the other one's the server. They're basically the same, so you're going to put your common C headers, so standard IO, string, C type, because we have certain data types we need to work with, and we have the standard library. Okay. Then the headers we need for sockets on the client side, as well as on the server side. There's going to be two others that you're going to need to include for the server. So these are the types here. So there's some reasons why we need them, but one of the main ones here is okay. We need short integers, but right here, H2 network short. So at the end of the sockets lecture, I put a bunch of functions there that I explained, and what I'm going to show you here. So on page 26, it's hidden. But you can see on page 26, you can see that I defined, okay, we need this short data type. We need this function, okay? This function is a host, okay, host to network short. And what it does is it ensures that the type, the endian of the bytes is going to be big endian, okay? That the bytes are going to be written in big endian format. Okay, which is one thing that we need, especially when working with sockets across a network where you have devices that could be Windows and others could be Linux based. Okay, so anyway, this is one function we need. Another function that we need is this get host by name function. Okay, so it's of type struct host dent. It's a pointer to that. Then we have a structure called the host end structure. Now these are defined in the headers that we have on this page. But keep this in mind, this structure in mind here, okay? Alright, so anyway, so what you're gonna do is so the client doesn't have these additional server side functions, okay? It doesn't need those functions. So it doesn't have them there, but basically we're starting off the same. Okay, so I see that there's some errors. Oh, nothing. Okay, it's just because it's slow. So we're gonna save all. It's fine. Okay, so these two. So client is going to be one program. Server is going to be another. They're going to be compiled separately. Okay, so let's go and build. Let's build the client first. Okay, so we just need a main in here, and what we're going to do is we're going to set up the client, and I'm going to try to do my best to explain what's going on in the program. Okay, so let's go in, and first thing we want to do is we want to set up, okay, let's go main. So we're going to put our main. Now these are going to be command line programs. So int argc and car star argv. Okay, so when we run these programs, we're going to run them from the command line, and it's going to take in arguments. Okay, so first thing we need to do, let's go in and set up the sockets. Now, by the way, you have the code. I just want to run you through programming at least one example, okay, to set up sockets, and we're going to do it in C here. All right, so first thing we need a buffer with a particular length. So car buffer. Now this is a constant defined in one of the headers. Okay, so this is our buffer for data communications. Okay, then we need a client socket. Okay, and it's of type integer, and then we need a length for the buffer. I should actually put that. Okay, so we'll say int len. Okay, you can comment. You can put the comments beside it. I don't want to spend a lot of time typing. So then we have that. Then we have the address, int address. Okay, and then we have the different structs that are defined again in the headers. So sock adder in. This is defined in the headers, and we're gonna call this our server address. Okay, so this struct is defined in the headers. Okay, so then we have that, and we have another struct, host entity, host ent. It's a pointer to a host ent. Okay, I like to write it actually like this. Okay, so it's a host ent pointer. So host is a pointer to the host ent struct. Okay. So the first thing, because this is a command line program, so what we want to do is we want to go in and make sure that the user input the data correctly. So we're going to say, so we say if, right? If the host, and we're going to say get host by name. Did I spell this right? Yep. Okay. And again, this function was defined. It's defined in the headers, and I showed you this function exists in the slides. Okay. So we're gonna get the host that's specified in argument 1. Okay. At the command line, right? So the 0th argument is gonna be client, right? Client.o, the output file. So here we're gonna say get host by name, and we're gonna say okay, argv that item at index 1. And we're going to say, okay, if they don't put anything there, right? So if they put nothing there, then we have to tell them they gotta input the IP address of where you want to connect to, right? The server that you want to connect to. So here we're just going to say printf, I don't know, please enter a valid, let's say server address, right? Server IP address. Okay, and then here we're basically going to end the program right there, right? We say return, and we'll return with a code. Okay, we'll use this code, return to. Okay, so if that doesn't happen, if they did enter a valid address, then what we're going to do is we're going to copy the data. Okay, copy the data to the address variable. It's that integer that we created. So we're going to say memcpy. Okay, so we're going to call memcopy, and we're going to copy everything to the address of the adder integer. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to copy host dot h. Okay, host. Oops. H underscore. Now, you see here in its adder list, adder type, aliases, h length, h name. Now, addr, if we use this, okay, right here, I'll just give you a, so here, so h underscore addr is defined somewhere. Okay, so somewhere, oh, shoot, wrong. Define addr as h. So if you go back here, okay, there's adder list, right? So we're looking for only one IP address that it's connected to. Okay, so what we're going to do, we can say adder list at 0, or we could make a definition here at h adder equals h adder. Now this one's list at 0. Okay, we can make this definition if we want, or we could just use the one that they have here. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to say adder list, and it's the first one, the only one it's connected to. Okay. All right. So we have that, and we're missing one more thing, the length, right? So how long do we want to make the? How much do we want to? How much of the host do we want to copy? How long is that length? And it's host h underscore length. Okay, so this is how much we're going to copy over. to adder. So this is the address, the IP address, okay, that we're copying everything to. Okay, we're copying everything to address. Okay, so what's next? Now what we need to do is we need to create the socket. Okay, so here we're going to say create the socket. All right, so here what we're going to say is here we're gonna use the socket command to actually create the socket, and we're gonna check for errors at the same time. So if we say if, okay, client underscore socket equals, now we're gonna call the socket command or socket function, okay, and here we're gonna use the AF inet. We're basically saying that we're gonna use the stream-based datagram. We're going to use UDP. So we're going to say AF inet, and we're going to say sock stream, and then we're going to use default 0. Okay. If this is less than 0, that means there's been an error, right? If it's -1, then what we're going to do is, oh, I missed, okay, there's an error. You see that if here has a squiggly line. I forgot to put the termination, line termination. I'm used to Python now. I've been writing Python for a while. Okay, so anyway, let's go back here. So client socket. So now we're going to say here there's a printf. We're going to say error setting up client socket, right? Because we want to use the socket command. And here we can return 3 as an indicator of the error if it doesn't print for some reason. Okay, so here we have the client socket. We determine the type of socket that we want, okay, using the sock with the socket command. Okay, so what are we going to do next? We want to find the, oh sorry, I made a mistake. The stream command is we're using a TCP connection. Okay, so basically that this is telling us we're using TCP, and we should be using TCP for if we're using text-based communications here. Okay, so yeah, so this is a TCP connection. All right, let's keep going. So we created the socket, okay, and assuming everything went well, and now what we're going to do is we're going to connect, set up a handle, okay, to connect the client socket to. Okay, so what are we going to do next? We're going to go in. We're going to say connect it to the server. Right? Because that's what we're going to do. We want to connect the client to the server, right? I mean, that's what we want to do. But before we do that, we gotta set up the address of the server, right? We need to know what is the address of the server. Okay, so step 1, set up the server address. Okay, and we got to put this in the struct. Okay. So that server address is a struct, right? It's a socket address, right? So in there, if we look, let's see where we are here. Okay, it doesn't matter. We'll just go from here. So what we want to do is we want to set up. We need to set up the server address. Okay, and it's in a struct format. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to set up that struct. Okay, so let's go memset. Okay, we're going to set everything. We're going to clear everything out. We're going to say memset. We're going to put all zeros. So we're going to say server adder. We're going to set it all zeros for the however big the size of server adder. Okay. So we're clearing out whatever is in that memory location, okay, so that we don't, there's nothing there, it's all zeros, and now we're going to set each element. So we're going to say server adder Okay. Family. Okay, is going to be AF INET. And most of the time we're going to use this. Okay. So this is we're basically using IPv4 addresses. Okay. Anyway, we can leave this. Okay. So we have that. Then we want to set the IP address. Okay. So then we say server. Okay. Dot s adder equals adder, and this is what we picked up from the uh, from the command line. Okay, so adder, remember this addr, we got this from the command line. Okay, all right, we got that from the okay. All right, so anyway, this is the server's address, which we get from the command line. And now what we're going to do is we're going to set the port. Okay, so we need an IP address and a port to connect to, right? So we say server. Sorry, I'm a little slow in typing, so bear with me. Let's in port equals H2NS, and then we're going to convert 5000. Okay, and or we could say port, P-O-R-T. Now this has got to be in network format. Okay, so it's going to be big endian. It needs to be in big endian format. Okay, so this server address is a struct. Okay, it was defined in the headers, and we're writing to this. Okay. We want to write to the struct. We want to tell it it's going to be a TCP packet. We give it a specific address, okay, and we get that address again from the user from the command line, okay. We get that from the command line. That's the host as the host, and then the host. That component, that IP address gets converted into address, and it takes the format that is expected by the struct. Okay, so we're converting it to the format that's acceptable by the struct. Now that we have the IP address and port, we know we can now connect. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to attempt a connection, right? So what I should do is make this a more higher level. Okay, and then here it's attempt to connect to server, right? All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to use the connect, right? Using connect, but we're going to put it in an if statement in case there is an error, right? So this is the standard practice. So we say connect. Now we're going to say client socket. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we have to provide it with the it's going to be provided using a struct. The address is provided using a struct. Okay, so we're connecting to the client socket, and then we're going to say struct sock header pointer, and then here we put the server address. Okay, and then the next input was the size of server adder. Okay, now if that, okay, so this is the outside of the, okay, if that is less than, okay, 0, then I think I have too many. Oh, no. Okay, the connect function. Let me see if I got this right. Okay, this guy is the connect functions bracket, and then this is for the whole if statement. Okay, so if if it's less than 0, if there's an error on the connection, then we're just going to print that there's been an error and close out, right? So we say printf, you could say error can't connect to server. How's that? Okay? And then what we're going to do, if you like, we should say \n. Okay. All of these we should put on. We should really put all these messages, just put them on a new line. And put a new line after it. Okay. Alright, so we have these error message here. Okay. And then we should close out. So we should before we close everything, we should close the client socket, because we created it using the socket command, right? So if there's an error, we gotta make sure we close it, and then we can return with a code. We'll say 4. Okay. So this is attempting to connect. Okay. So now once we've made our connection, then here is where we actually want to set up to send a message. So we're going to say create a message to send. Okay, 1 second here. All right. Okay. Create a message to send to server. Okay. So here we are. So what we need to do is get a message from the user, right? So we're going to say printf, and then here, okay, let's put it on a new line. Please enter, or just enter message for server. Okay, and then what we're going to do is, okay, let's just flush. Okay, and then here we're going to use fgets. Okay, we're going to get, so this is the buffer. I'm going to say size of buffer, and we're going to get from standard in. Okay. So this is the fgets command if you want. You can use whatever you like. But okay, so now what we want to do is basically wait until enter is pressed. Okay, and then add the termination character. So we're going to say if buffer /, that's why we need the string commands, buffer -1. Okay, and then we say basically it's looking for the new line, right? We're going to replace new line with the string termination character, basically. Okay. All right. So if it's pressed, then what we're going to do is we're basically going to say buffer at /len of buffer -1, right? And we're going to say equals, and we're going to replace it with the string termination character. That's it. Okay? And then we close that statement. Am I missing something? Yes, somewhere I'm missing. Okay, buffer at that point equals that. Yeah, okay. Good. Okay, so we got the string. So now we have the string as, all right, and now we're going to actually send the message using the write command. Okay, so send the message using the write command. Okay? All right. So what are we going to do? We're basically say write client socket. So we're using our socket, which is connected to the server, right? We're going to write the buffer, the contents of the buffer there, up to and including /len buffer, because we want to include the and the string termination character. So when it's printed on the other side, they have the string termination character. Okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to read anything that comes back from the server. So read back any messages that return from the server. Okay? So here, and again, this is just going to be, we're sending a message to the server sends us back one message. Okay? You can put this in a loop if you like, but anyway, so we're just going to show you in this video this connection. Alright, so here we have the length. Length is the length of the message that is going to be read back from the server. So we're going to use the read function, and we're going to say we're going to read the client socket, right? Because this one is connected to the server. The server has a unique socket to communicate with the client. We're going to read. We're going to use buffer this time. Say size of, and then buffer. Okay, that's why we have the other side's going to put a string termination character as well. Okay, so we're using the same buffer in this case. Okay, so we're going to write to that same buffer and put a string terminator from the other side, and everything should be okay. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to print it. So printf server response. How's that? Right, printf. We're going to say server response, and then we're going to say %s and then \n. Okay, and then in here we're going to put in the buffer. Okay, and then at the end, so it's just going to be one message sent, one message received, and now we're going to close connection, right? And here we're just going to say close. We're going to close down our client socket. All right, and then we're going to say, I don't know, printf connection terminated. Okay, and that's it for this guy. Okay, so let's see, is there any errors in here? Well, there's an error in server, but we haven't really done anything with server yet. Okay, and at the end of this main, we need to return, obviously, that everything was correct. So we're going to return 0 success. Okay, Control S. Now we got to do the same thing on the server side, but the server side is going to be a little more complicated because we have to set up the 2 ports, right? All right, so let's go over to the server, and again we're going to set up our. Okay, so we got int main. Now this one's going to be used in exactly the same way. So here we don't actually have to make any command line because the server is just going to sit there, right? So and it's only going to use one port, okay, for handling the communication because it's only expecting one connection. Okay, so here I actually don't have anything. I just start the server without having to do anything. Okay, the server is always going to be listening on port 5000. Okay. All right. So first thing, just like we saw in the on the client side, we need a buffer. So car, right? Buffer, and we're going to use buffs, which is defined in the headers. Okay. Then what we need is we need 2 sockets. We need a socket for the server to listen on. So there's the listening socket, and then there's the socket that the server connects with the client. Okay, so we're gonna say int. I'm gonna say server socket. Okay, and then this one. Let me just make this clear. This is the listening socket. Okay, and then we have int. I'm gonna call this the client socket. Okay, and this is the one. Oh, I forgot to put the end of line. Okay, and this one is unique socket for every client. Okay, that's the point that we need. Okay, and then we need the length of the client response. So client len. Okay, and then we need, I didn't spell client right. Okay, and then we need to, okay, we need to use the same structs that we had before for setting up the addresses. So what we're going to do is we're going to say struct sock adder, and again this is defined in the headers, and we need 2 of them. Okay, so we're going to have the client's address, okay, right, and then we have the server address, right. So this one, let me make it clear. This is the struct containing the address info for socket for each client, set up for each client, right? And the other one is the listening one. So we need an address for the listening one. So we're going to do the same thing. Struct here. Let me just copy this. Okay, and this one is the server, but this one is the listening. This is the server. Okay, this is the server address for listening. To listen for incoming, I would just say to listen for incoming connection. Okay, so this is there's 2, right? One for every client that connects, and then one that it's just listening. This is the passive port. Okay, and we're going to need a couple of integer counters. So let's just put them in. So the length of the message, and then a counter of some sort. Okay, so let's go in and start. So we need to use the socket command, right? And then we're going to copy an address to bind to those sockets, right? To that particular socket, and then we're going to listen on the server side. We're going to start listening for incoming sockets. Then we're going to accept, and then we're going to read and write. Okay, so let's get this one started. So the first step is to create the socket, right? Create socket, and we're going to use the socket command. So we'll just check for errors here. So if server socket, right? So this server socket is going to be set to, we're going to use the socket command, socket function, and we're going to again use AF net. So it's going to be a TCP. So we're going to say sock, and then stream 0. Now if this is, make sure that I'm at the right bracket, is less than 0, okay, then we end it, right? Otherwise the socket will be created. So we say printf, and then go here, error, cannot create server socket, something like that. Okay, and then we're going to return, and we're going to pass, just as an error code, we'll return 1. Okay, save that. And then the next thing, okay, so the socket's created. Now we need to connect or bind, we should use the word bind, the created socket to an address. Okay. All right. Now this one is going to be, let's do this one first. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to use that memset command again. So we're going to say memset to clear. So we need to clear this memory location. So we're going to say server adder. We're going to put all zeros there. Okay, and this is how many zeros you want to put. Server adder, how many bytes actually? Okay, So that's that part. And then we need to set the uh, the addresses. Okay, so we're gonna say server, okay, adder dot sin family equals af inet. Okay, and then we want to use the let's see, we need to bind to any. Okay, so here we want to bind to any and all available interfaces. Okay, all IP addresses that are on the server. Okay, so here it's server. We could have picked port 5000 to listen to here, but anyway, we're listening for any and all connections in this example. So server adder dot sin adder. Okay, so server adder sin adder dot s adder. Okay, it's good that you have this completion here. So it's host to network short for this example. Actually, no, this one's short to network long. Okay, we're going to use, and then we use this adder any. Okay, so here we're binding to all interfaces, all IP addresses that are on the server. Okay, so we're using this big endian, right? Host to network long, big endian. If you remember here, we had host to network short for the particular port. It doesn't really matter. We could choose a particular port, but this one is for listening. Okay, this is the listening port. Okay, so let's keep going. So we've set up our okay. Okay, so we're binding the sockets to all the available interfaces in this one, but we're actually going to set up a particular port. Let's set up server adder dot sin port equals to network short. So we're going to connect to this port. Okay. Okay, so here is our binding to the port, to the particular port. Let me see if I can. Okay, let's save that. Okay, so now we're actually going to do the binding. So we've set the address that we want to listen to. Okay, and that's at port the address, the IP address of what's the server is, and the port number is going to be port 5000 that we're listening to. So now we're actually going to do the binding. So here we're going to use that if, and then we're going to use bind. Okay, and then we're going to say server socket. Okay, so we've set the server socket that we've created using socket. Okay, you see the if statement above there, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pass in the address that we just the socket address that we're creating. So we say struct sock adder winner, and here we put the server address that we just did, server adder. Okay, and that's what we just set up just now. Okay, and here we're going to put how big, size of server adder. Okay, now if this is less than 0, right? That means that there would be an error. Then we're gonna print the error, right? Printf, and then we say error, say binding error on server. You could just say it's a binding error. How about we just say binding to server socket. Okay. All right. And then what we need to do is we need to close server socket. Okay, and then we'll just use return, and we'll use a code 2 will be signal for this type of error if the message doesn't print for some reason. All right. So next, okay, so we've got a socket on the server side, right, that we're listening on. So the server is listening on port 500. This is the listening port. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to configure, we need to get the server to start listening to this port. So now we need to listen for incoming connections on port 5000, right? We could just say on port and then PORT if you like. Okay, so we're listening for incoming connections. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to, again, use the error checking method. So we say if, and we go here, we say listen, server socket. Okay, so we're listening here. If that is less than 0, okay, so we're actually setting, okay, I should actually point out here that 1 means maximum clients is only 1. Okay, so 1 connection at a time. Okay, so we have this here, and I shouldn't have closed that. I need to keep going with this. Let me cut that and put that on the next line. Okay, so if there's a connection, then if there's an error, then we print f, right? If it's less than 0, then there's an error. Then error, so we could just put error listening. Okay, so this will be an error for listening. And again, I should really be putting any errors on new line. Okay. Okay, and then once you print, then we want to close because we have that socket open. Server socket. Okay, and then our code will be return 3 will be the code for this error. All right, so now if there's no error, then this command will not be less than 0. I mean, there will be a connection. As soon as there's a connection, okay, then basically it's going to start accepting those connections, right? So now what we need to do is we need to use the client socket. Okay, so we need to set up our client socket to accept connections. So we're going to create a socket. It's going to use the ephemeral ports of the server. Okay, so not a well-known port. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to create that socket. Okay, and then we're going to accept connections for that socket and bind the client, right? The client's IP address, right, and port to this particular socket that we're going to create. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, if if client connection incoming on say listen command, right? Right? Then it's successful. Right? Then what we're going to do is we're going to accept the connection. So what we need to do is, okay, first thing is we need the client len, okay, equals size of client adder. Okay. So where's the client? Okay, so this is the client address, which we found in here. Okay, so we could, yeah. Okay, we defined it up here at the top. Okay. Okay, so the client len is the size of the client address. So next, what we want to do is we want to accept the connection. So we say we're going to check for errors the same way we did before. So we say if, and then here we say client socket. Here we're going to set it equal to accept. Okay. Now the connections are coming in on the server socket. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to store the, so it's listening on the server socket, okay, for connections to come in. And this struct the client at here, let me see here. Accept the server socket. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say struct sock adder. Okay. And then here we have the client's address. And then we have client len. Okay, so this is here we're going to have our error checking. So let's go here. Okay, so if the accept command is less than 0, there's an error, right? Okay, so what's happening here is we're storing in client address. So the incoming connection from the client, we're getting the socket address of the client, okay, with the accept command. Okay, it's listening on the server socket. So if it was an HTTP web server, it's listening at port 80. Okay, and what it's doing is it's saying, okay, you take this client address and bind it to this socket. So any incoming connections on the server socket, you're going to see the origin where those connections started, where that socket on the client side is created. You'll know that's the IP address and port number, and you're going to bind it to this client socket. So this is a socket that's unique for every client. Okay? So now, if there's an error, we're going to say print f, and then we're going to say error accepting connection. Okay? So there's an error in accepting the client connection. Then we're going to close the server socket. Okay, and then our code is going to be return 4 for this type of error. Okay, so we have the client socket. We have a socket for this particular client that is set using the accept command. Okay, all right. So let's go down to what happens after. So now what we can do, now that we have the socket that's established, we can read anything that comes in on the client socket. So now we can read from client socket, right? So data sent from client. Okay, so here we're going to use the read command. So we're going to say read. We're going to read from client socket, and and we're gonna put that into buffer, and the size is buff sys, or we could use size of buffer if you like. It doesn't really matter. Okay, because buff sys is the size of buffer. Okay, and then you could say, okay, what did the client print? What did the client send? So here, let me go back up here. Printf. So we could say client or message from client. How's that? Message from client, and we could say %s \n, and then put in what's in the buffer. Now the buffer has to have the string termination character for this to work properly. Okay, and then what we can do is we could send something back to the client, right? So here, what we're going to do is we're going to say cat. Okay, I'm going to say buffer, and then we're going to say is the message received by the server. So we're replying basically what the client sent to the server. We're just replying it back to them. Okay, so \n, and then what we're going to say is the length that we're sending back is strlen of the buffer. Okay, close that off. And then what we're going to do is write that message from server to client. So we're using the client socket. We're putting whatever's in the buffer onto the client socket up to length len. And then we're done. Then that's the end of our communication. Close the socket, and we just say close. And then we're going to close the client socket. Okay, and then we also have the server socket that we should close, right? Close the server socket. Okay, because we've created two sockets, right? So this is close the socket. So this one closes the connection between client and server. Okay, this one closes the listening socket. So if you don't close that, the next time you run the program, you're going to run into issues, right? Because you're trying to access the same resource and you haven't closed it, right? And then you can close the program. Return 0, and you can say success, right? All right. Okay. So now we have two programs, right? Okay, let's see what's the issue. We have an issue with the client? No, it's slow. Okay, so if we say save all, it's already saved. Okay, so next what do? Now we have two programs. Okay, so let's go here. We can open up the terminal here. Now I wonder if I have installed, and I should have it already installed. I should have GCC, and it should be installed by default. If we don't have it, we can install it. Alright, so let's go. So we're in the socket examples. We've got both of them. So let's try and see if we have GCC. So let's go here and say GCC. I think you can do it like this. It should tell me if I have what version I have. Okay, perfect. So it's available. So what I'm going to say is GCC and output. I'm going to call it server, right? And I'm going to say server dot C is what we want. Okay, so we're outputting to server. It's gonna be server.o, and we're doing server.c. Let's see what happens. Any issues compiling? All right, passing second. Okay, so there's a warning. Let's see if there's an issue. We might have an issue here. Let me see. All right, so server.c, line 13. Go to server.c, line 13. Nothing. No, there shouldn't be an issue here. Okay, there's an issue. Oh, sorry. Line 45. So let's go to 45 and see if I have any issue there. Did I type something wrong? Or let's just check our braces, brackets. Okay, I think I have an issue with sock. That data type is not correct. Sock adder. Okay, so let's save and go back here and do it again. Compile, no issue. Beautiful. All right, so we got server. Now what we need to do is do the same thing for client. So we want to go change everything from here. We're going to use output to client, and then I'm going to compile client.c. No issue. Beautiful. Okay, so now what we can do. Okay, so I'm using the terminal here, but the built-in terminal for VS Code. Okay, so what I want to do is let's just let's close this. So we saved, everything is saved. Let's exit from here and just open up two terminals. So I want this one, and let's see if I can open up another one. New terminal. Right click, new terminal. You have two beside each other. Okay, so we'll make this one, the top one, the client, and the bottom one, the server. So the server has to be run first, right? So what I have to do first of all, I have to go into so I need to go into desktop, right? And then I need to go into sockets and then example, right? Too many arguments. Oh shoot, space. So let's do it again. Go here. You know what you want to, if you want to do something, just type this and then type tab. Okay, so you see that you have to escape the space. So make sure that you don't make the same mistake I just did. Okay, so we're in here, and the same thing here. So if you go here, you go CD, and they say desktop, and then / and just push S and then tab. Does it for you. It auto completes nicely for you. Okay, so like I said, the bottom one we're going to make the server. The server has to be started first because the client has to connect to something, right? So the server has to be running. So if we just type server, and it has to be called with, okay, wait a minute, command server, command not found. No, we don't want that. Maybe there's an issue with the name. Oh, sorry, server. That was something. Okay, so the server is listening now, right? So / it runs executables. Simple. Now what we want to do is we want to call the client, okay, and we have to give it an IP address, right? So what I could say is I could say local host, which is, I mean, local host is the same as 127.0.0.1, right? It's exactly the same. Now these instructions, I'm also giving these to you in writing, so you don't have to worry if there's an issue. But anyway, it needs to know the IP address, and here I'm using localhost. Okay, the port is already defined as port 5000. The client is connecting to port 5000. The server is listening to port 5000, but the client needs to know what machine to connect to. So click localhost, and all we're going to do is we're going to say hello server, okay, and enter. And you see, look, I didn't type. All right, so if you look here, you see the server got the message from client, hello server, right? The client wrote hello server, and it received a response from the server, right? Server response, hello server is the message received by the server, okay? And then it says connection terminated, and probably what I need to do is go in and under connection terminated, just put a new line because I forgot for that. So connection terminated should be where is it here? It's under the last message that is written. So I should really put, right, wherever I have, I should put these things on a new line, right? \n, \n, \n. Okay, so let's close this, save everything, and I think we're good from this point on, right? So everything is saved. We save all, exit, and I mean we won't have these issues. So this is great. I wanted to show you one other thing that you can actually have. Let's go here. I'll show you just a built-in. There's some built-in functions that use. So if you ever heard of NC, okay, this is Netcat. Okay, so what you can do with Netcat is pretty cool. Okay, what Netcat does is you can actually write to the particular machine that you're working on, right? And you can use Netcat for listening. Okay, so one can be listening, and the other side can be you can actually write to. So if I make one a server nc-l, oh wait a second, do I have? Let me see where it is here. We have to have a particular port. Okay, give me a second. I'm gonna it's something interesting just to show you at the end of the video. Okay, so if you're interested in finding out if you forget certain terminal commands, if you just type man and then nc, so nc, that's the command, and you can look through here. This is the manual page for this command. Okay, and there's some examples in here that you can look at. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, let's go back, push Q. Okay, so one side is going to be listening, okay, and the other side is going to be listening to a port, and the other side is going to be the client. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say this side's listening, so NC, and we're going to say listen, and by default we're going to listen to the it's loopback. Okay, so we're going to be listening to the this IP, the IP of this computer. Okay, and we're going to pick a port. I don't know, let's go with 5000 again. Okay, so this side is the server listening to connections on port 5000. Okay, this side is the client. So what we're going to say, we're going to say netcat, and now we're going to say, okay, we want to send to the loopback address. So 127.0.0.1, or we could have put localhost if we like, and then we're going to put the port that we're going to write to. Okay, so this one is listening. The other one, well, the server is listening on its own IP address. Okay, on the server side. And what port on the server do you want to listen to? Great. Okay. Then the client has to connect to the server, and it needs to pick a particular IP address. And we're using loopback because right now we're in the same machine. If they were on different machines, you could do this as well. You just have to pick the IP address of the other machine. And now all I have to do is say hello, and it's written there. How are you? I'm fine, etc. Right? So we're doing the same thing using one of the Linux terminal commands. Okay? So anyway, here is just some. I just wanted to give you a video to show you how to build socket-based communication programs, and to get a better understanding of the lecture, and to help you with the homework assignment. Okay, I hope this was beneficial and helpful, and I hope to see good results from the homework assignment that you guys are going to work on. All right, have a good night or day.